Alrighty. Um, sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. Um, we're moving on to, let's see, this is going to be page 3 of handout number 4. It's labeled 4C layer settings. Um, so what we need to do is layers are a way just to organize information within the drawing file. They work, if you're familiar with Illustrator or Photoshop, it's pretty much the same way with one very noticeable exception. Um, it doesn't matter what layer you're actively on in AutoCAD, you can still select all the items on all the other layers. It's just one of those things that they baked in way back in the day. There's a way that you can get around it, but for the most part, the layers that you have are uh, there's some arbitrariness to what you set the name to, and what we can do is we're also going to set up default conditions for those layers for their color or their line weight or their line type, so that all the objects on that layer will take on the properties that we set as defaults for that layer. Explaining it sounds a little weird, but when you actually see it in practice, it'll make a little more sense. So I'm going to come up here to layer properties, and I'm going to click on my layers. And you'll notice we've got a great big giant nothing. And what you see here is layer 0. It's a default. It's there. It's in AutoCAD, and you can't delete it no matter what. So we're just going to run with it. Now, if you look at your handout, you'll see we've got some additional entries here over the left-hand side for filters. We're going to come back to that. Right now, we're just going to focus on everything here. And you notice if I hold my mouse over this, that I'll be able to stretch it out and I can move it back and forth similar to an Excel spreadsheet. I can do the same with my layer names. I can move that back and forth. Um, so yeah, it's just one of those things where you don't know you can do it until you see someone who can do it, and then, hey, wow, I can do this thing. So in order to create a new layer, it's real simple. I just come right up here to the top and I click on Create a New Layer. And according to the first item that I have here in the list, I'm going to name this G-NO-DIMS. I'll press Return. Now, what I'm going to be teaching you when I'm leading in class, and I already explained this during class today, is that G stands for general. That means it can cover any one of the disciplines. This first letter is usually a discipline-specific indicator. So there's G for general, there's M for mechanical, and E for electrical, P for plumbing, A for architecture, S for structure, C for civil. There's actually I for interiors, but we're going to use A because actually most companies use architectural type names if they use this. If they use this system. This is the AIA layer standards. So if you want to do a Google search on the AIA layer guidelines, you'll get a list of names for layers that's just miles long. So that's why I'm naming all these names, or putting all these names together this way. Now the next item that we can select is going to be the color of the layer. Now there is no standard for this. Every company pretty much in the world does something different. So basically, I'm teaching you the colors that I've established at the firms that I've been employed at, mainly because I'm the one that set up the standards going all the way back 20 some odd years now. To change the color of it, we'll just select this swatch, this color swatch, and this is the AutoCAD color table. This is the color index. These are the standard colors that AutoCAD can use. And as you can see, as I move my mouse around, you can see right here that index color value. You can see that number change as I mouse around. Or I can come down here and I can actually key in, I can type in a number. And I want the color for my dimensions to be 11. And it's going to turn out to be a pink. So G for general, so any discipline can use it. ANO because it's an annotation or it's a notational symbol. DIMS for your dimensions. And I'm going to set its line weight to 0.25 and click OK. Now you notice when I created this layer, I had layer 0 highlighted, and so my new layer, GNO-DIMS, started white and had that line weight of 0.25. Right now the line weight is listed as default. I don't remember what the default line weight is. I want to think it's 0.25, but I could be wrong. And that's buried somewhere in another setting somewhere. Um, I leave layer 0 set to the default line weight, but I change its color. I like using color 232 for layer 0, mainly because I'm a very visual thinker, so I like a visual representation to indicate how things are different, how things are organized, and after years and years and years of working with the system, I can spot color 232 just about anywhere in a drawing, and it helps me identify what that object is, how I'm trying to organize it, and if it's correct or not. And 99 times out of 100, anything drawn in layer 0 in a CAD file that I've put together should not be on layer 0. The exception would be if I'm creating a block. And we did that. We did that in some of the earlier exercises, but at the time we didn't have the color for layer 0 set to color 232. We had it set to white so that everything looked white. So that's why I did that. So I'm going to create another layer. Now you notice we changed the color of layer 0 to 232, and this is the layer that I've got highlighted. So when I click on a new layer, it's set to color 232 as well. So whatever layer I have selected, that's going to be the default setting for the new layer or layers that I create next. This next layer that I create is going to be GNONPLT. And these are items that I want to see on the screen, but they're not going to print. And I'm going to change its color to color 222. And I can come down here to this little print icon, and I can click on it, and you can see it has that little red international no symbol on there. That means this layer will not print. And I'm going to change its line weight. Not that it really makes a difference, but it's only because I want to see it or not see it. The line weight on the screen, I'm going to change it to 0.0. I want it real thin. And I'm going to change its line type, which means it's going to be dashed. Now you can have dashes and centers and all other kinds of line types. But you can see I don't have any options here. I have to load my options. So I'm going to click load. And now I can just scroll down in the list until I find the line weight or line type I'm looking for, and that's called hidden 2. And I'll click OK. I've loaded hidden 2 into my current drawing. Now I can select hidden 2 and click OK. And now anything I draw on the GNO layer will be color 222 by default, the line type of hidden 2 by default, and it will be a super, super thin line weight by default. So I'm going to go create all the other layers that are in this dialog. There's one correction that needs to be made. On the handout in this section on the left-hand side, there's a layer called GNOSYMB, SYMB. It's listed as having a line weight of 0.25. It's supposed to be a line weight of 0.50. So I'm just going to type all this up, and you guys can just watch and go along as you want to. So I'm going to highlight layer 0, and I'm going to type things along. Create a new layer. When you're creating multiple new layers, G-NO-RMNM for room number, instead of pushing return, I can push comma, and instantly I'm creating another new layer. So GNO symbol. You'll notice that I'm using all capitals. This is just sort of my preference here. And there we go. I'm done creating all those layer names. Now you'll notice my colors aren't set correctly, and neither am I set anything alphabetically. I can force this to be alphabetical if I just like on in Excel, I can resort this by clicking on the title. Even though in Excel you actually right click and it says sort ascending or sort descending, this is amounting to the same thing. You can see that little triangle like there. Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to reset. I'm going to change all these. I do know that my viewport layer, VPRT for viewport, will describe what these things are a little later. I don't want that to print. I'm going to hold down my control key, and that will allow me to select multiple layers. I know that both of my XREF layers are the same color. That's color 111, and both of them, well, that and viewport are all the same line weight. Let me come here and say 0.15. Just going to grab all these because, well, no, I don't want to do that. There's just enough differentiation. It's going to cause more confusion. So my room numbers are color 21. Symbols are 132. Text is 31. Titles is 212. Title block. Now it says GR dot 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 here in the colors. Well, that's green. That's this guy right here. It also happens to be the color 3. So you click on 3 and it actually says green there. So it's my fault for not making that clear on the handout. Title block text is 141. And my viewport layer, or my viewport color is 231, not 232. So I have all my colors set. So just as I sorted layers by their layer name, by clicking on the top bar here, I can sort by color as well, in either ascending or descending order. I can come over here and I can sort by line weight if I wanted to. But I need to set the rest of these line weights. So room number is 0.35. Symbols 0.5. And I just want to scroll down so I can highlight that. Text is 0.25. Title's 0.5. Title block is 0.7. Title block text is 0.35. Okay, so this is everything here in the G section. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to speed the video up a little bit in editing. All I'm going to do is I'm going to recreate all the layer names that are listed in the middle section and in the right-hand section of your layout, or of the handout labeled 4C layer settings. There's another correction that needs to be made here. There's a line type in both of these sections that's listed as overhead. That's an internal line type that I use at work, and we're not using it here in class. So we're going to use hidden to instead. And for the column grids, you'll see another line type that's listed as center line. We're going to change that to center to. Again, hopefully it'll all make sense. Once again, I do want to remind you, the section over here in the handout for the filters, we will get to that. I want to create all of our layer names first. So here we go. We're just going to start typing a lot of things and go for it. Okay, you've seen me complete this list for the existing layers. Let's go forward and keep adding layers for all the new layers. Okay, the line type that I want to use right here, just a quick reminder, it's a correction from the handout. The line type listed in the handout says center line. You guys aren't going to have it. Like I said, it's an internal line type that I use at the office I work at. So instead of selecting a line type here, I need to load a new one. I'm just going to scroll down a bit until I find center 2. I click OK. Now this just loads it into the current file. Changing it here will actually change the line type of the layers. Okay, now we've got one gigantic list of layers over here. We still haven't added these filters in. I'm going to show you how to do that now. I'm going to click on this icon. It might be, it's kind of hard to see. This is like a folder icon. This is a folder icon, and that little inverted triangle. If you zoom in on it, it's actually a funnel. And once we see this, then we'll get a dialog. There we go. And I'm going to call this existing. I'm going to take my caps lock off. Existing to remain. And I pushed enter. I shouldn't have pushed enter. So I'm going to right click and come down and say properties. My mistake. Now we can filter by any quality that a layer would possess. We can filter whether the layer is used, what its viewport categories are, how the layer is used. We can filter by whether the layer is on or off, whether the layer is frozen, whether the layer is locked, whether the layer is set to plot or not. We can filter this layer based on what color it is or what line type it is. I'm going to filter these layers based on its name. Now, as soon as I click in here, the first thing that's going to show up, it's kind of hard to read, but it's a star. You know, the Shift 8. Some people will call it a splat if you're really old school like I am. But I'm going to type in splat-e. Back up. I'm going to make that uppercase E just to match. And you'll notice I have a preview here of how that filter is going to be applied. So now I'll click OK. And now the only layers that I see, there we go, are going to be layers that end with an E. Those of you who have done any work in DOS, those of you who have done any work in a command line, maybe those of you who have played around with Linux and used the command line there, that's where this star or a splat comes from. It's a wildcard character, and it basically means any character, every character, regardless of how many characters there are. So what we're telling AutoCAD is show me every single layer. I don't care how long the name of the layer is, as long as it ends with a dash and an E, then show it to me. So that's what we're saying. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click on that little filter icon again. I'm going to create a new property filter. And this is going to say general. And I'll have my caps lock on. This time, since all those general layers begin with a G, I'm going to make sure I backspace, delete everything here. I'm going to say G dash star. So every layer that starts with a G and a dash, no matter how many characters come after it, are going to show up in this filter. And now I'm going to create one more. And this one will read new construction. And for the name of this, is going to be star dash N. And now only the layers that end with a dash N, no matter how many characters are at the beginning of it, those are the only layers that will show up here. So I can look at every single layer that I have in the drawing, and that'll show me layer 0, it'll show me all the existing layers and all the new layers. I can look at all the used layers. which there's nothing to show. I can look at all my existing layers to remain, all my general layers, all my new construction layers. Now, for a renovation project, there would be another category in here called demolition, and we would have another duplicate of all these layer names in here, and it would have a -D at the end of it. They would still be a different color, and then their line type would actually be another line type to indicate demolition work, the walls that we're going to tear out. None of our projects have that, but I'm going to just mention it in passing because conceptually I want you to understand what's going on here. Now, in addition to showing all the layers that are available, we can also see them right up here. If I expand this list, this will allow me to change the layer that I'm actively drawing on. It will also allow me to change the layer of an object that's already been drawn. But you see that I'm only seeing my new layers. So if I come back over here and expand this and say, show me my general layers, if I come back to this drop down, it will only show my general layers. So if you know you've got additional layers, but you can only see some of them, then that means your filter needs to be set differently. And now that I've got everything shown, I can come up here and I can click on this drop down tool, and now I can see every single layer in the drawing. Sometimes you want to see every layer in the drawing, sometimes you won't. It all boils down to preference. All right, that is creating layers. The next item is going to be creating the dimension styles.